Last night I dreamed I was dining in a restaurant with my upcoming opponent in some tournament. Now what the tournament was for I have no idea. Bowling, boxing, don't know. I didn't recognize my opponent either. Well, he looked a little bit like deceased actor Nicholas Worth. Just this big, bald dude. I mean, it wasn't him. This guy was a lot taller than Nicholas Worth was. And I remember my opponent was wearing a white t-shirt. Anyways, we're seated. I don't know why we're having dinner together. We seem to be on friendly terms, even though we're about to engage in some kind of competition in the upcoming week. Like I said before, this is a big, nice, fancy restaurant. There's a huge aquarium near our table. And my opponent, he orders some blue Kool-Aid. Not any flavor, just a color. So give me some blue Kool-Aid. You know, the waiter brings back some blue Kool-Aid on a really fancy silver platter. And he takes one sip and he has a fatal allergic reaction. He starts gagging, and then he turns transparent, and then water gradually begins seeping out of his tear ducts, his ears, nostrils, mouth, until finally he's just gushing water that is gradually turning a more bluish hue, and then his epithelial tissue, which is now just turgid and spraying water everywhere, just eventually pops, and he just gushes to the floor, and he's nothing but this gigantic puddle of blue liquid, which, I would presume is, it's like he's become the blue Kool-Aid that he just had a sip of. It was a pretty horrifying sight. Then a couple of days later, I went to a recording studio. And this looked like an old recording studio. It looked like a 1970s recording studio. I seem to remember some posters for bands that were very popular during the 1970s being tacked onto the walls. There's lots of wood paneling on the walls of this place. I liked it. It was a nice little recording studio. And anyways, Fred Sonic Smith, the deceased guitarist for the MC5, he used to be married to Patti Smith. He formed his own band at one point called Sonic's Rendezvous Band. I think that's what they were called. I think, yeah. Anyways, he was there to... I don't remember if he was going to record a song that was to be played as an introduction for the upcoming televised tournament, or if he was actually going to perform live at this televised tournament that I was going to be competing in. Maybe both. But anyways, he was practicing, and I was there. I talked to him for a moment. I said, "Oh man, it's pretty rough. You heard about my opponent in the restaurant. He drank that Kool-Aid and then turned into it and exploded." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I did hear about that, man. That's rough." And for a moment we discussed possible replacements, or if there's going to be anybody else that'll be able to dethrone me in this upcoming tournament. Again, I couldn't get out of him like what it was that I was going to be competing in. I was thinking it was bowling. I don't know. Maybe it was bowling. I don't know. But anyways, we talked for a while, and yeah, I brought up my opponent and what happened to him in the nice restaurant once again, and this time Fred cracked up. He paused, and then he sang the chorus, he sang like a 30-second excerpt from a song that he came up with when he was, when he had his own band, Sonic's Rendezvous Band. And the song was called City Slang. He sung City Slang, but he changed the lyrics to mock my dead opponent. And I thought, wow, man, you really, I laughed. It was funny. I don't remember exactly what it was. Something, he's mocking the fact that he drank this Kool-Aid and turned into Kool-Aid and exploded in this nice restaurant. And he just, he took the lyrics to the song City Slang and changed them perfectly. He didn't have his amp, he didn't have his guitar plugged into an amp, but he did play it on the guitar as well. And we had a big laugh from that, and I complimented him. I said, "Man, you really can think fast on your feet, Fred." And then, a guy who was organizing the tournament. He was an older gentleman, not very tall. He had a brown collared shirt. You could tell this guy had darker hair when he was younger. Now he had a horseshoe, and it was salt and pepper. He was graying. He had a mustache, glasses. He was a guy that I used to know, a guy named Keith, who was musically inclined. He was a very nice guy. He used to come into the place that I worked at, actually two places that I worked at, and he would love talking to me, whenever I had a moment, and he would bring books in that he'd recommended for me, unfortunately he suffered from mental illness, this guy, Keith. I never did ask him which one, or which ones, but I did encounter him years later after, we had all of these conversations at the place I used to work at, and he, I don't know if he was off of his medication or if his medication was just no longer effective, but whatever mental illness or illnesses he suffered from were clearly getting the better of him, and just walking around in public and conversing with other people was causing problems for him. He was behaving in a way that really alarmed a lot of people, and I felt bad for him. And I didn't see him again for a long time after that, and about a month ago I picked up one of these free local newspapers. Just somebody drops on your doorstep here. They're funded from donations by residents, and inside of this local rag there was an obituary for Keith. Keith had died. He had some form of cancer, and there was acknowledgement in the article about his life. There was acknowledgement of him having suffered from a mental illness. Anyways, Keith was the guy who was organizing this tournament in my dream, and he was just going over like, okay, you need to show up at this time, we're going to have photographers here, and he's just outlining everything that I need to do within the next few days to properly promote this event, generate as much interest as possible. And as he was going through these instructions, I woke up.